Should you sell days and hours or should you sell projects? It's one of the common questions I get from people who want to start their own data or data AI consultancy. They say to me, look, what should I do? Should I bill people by the number of days I spend on their work, or should I just bundle it up as a project and sell, a fixed price? Now, this actually is one of the more difficult things to answer, and the reason for that is I run a data and analytics company, and I actually do both. I have some instances where I sell days and hours. I actually we bill by how many days we work on someone's project, and then also we bundle things into projects and give fixed prices and ideally fixed timelines. Now, what we've learned from both is that sometimes when you have sort of selling days and hours, it doesn't really allow for you to scale well, because in order to make more money you need to put more people on that pricing model. You need to put more people selling more days and hours of that people. On the other hand, the project one really works well because we can have people across multiple projects at the same time, as long as we deliver to budget and to time. However, on the project side, what we found is that unless you keep scope very tight, unless you keep requirements aligned to the statement of work, you end up expanding the remit of the project, and you end up spending more time or spending more money or more resource, which costs you, but because you've told the client it's a fixed price, it won't cost them. So what should you do? Now, personally, if you have a lot of experience in the data analytics space, so for example, I've worked in this space for a long time, so when I'm asked to quote on a project, I'm actually getting quite good at understanding how long these projects will take, how much resource, and therefore how much it will cost me, and then I'm able to offer my clients a fixed price, a fixed time project statement of work for that project. So in order to get to that situation, you need to be experienced to know how long these things take. So for example, if we get a lot of requests around building dashboards, so we sort of know how long certain dashboards to take, whether it's in Power BI, Tableau, or any other tool, and then we're able to sort of work out what kind of dependencies, what kind of risks there could potentially be, and then in the statement of work we sort of say, look, this is how we think it will pan out, this is how long it will take, this is how much it will cost, but here are some risks. So for example, if we don't get sign off from you in time, that could delay timelines and so forth. But because we work on multiple projects, we've now been able to mitigate, for example, if there's a delay, we can then shift those resources onto another project, so they're working on something else while the client comes back with a decision on that. But we try not to let that slip too much. So you still got to work out when you're delivering a project, how long it will take you to do, how long you need feedback, or how long you're going to give the clients to give you feedback, and don't be unrealistic. So for example, telling the client they've only got 1 or 2 days to give feedback is really unrealistic. You've got to at least give them a week, if not more, and so you've got to work out with the client you're working on what speed they operate at, and that usually happens through having sort of initial meetings with them to understand how fast they can operate, and also how many people they've got on this project, because if they've got one person who's also doing a day job, then you're going to have a huge bottleneck. So for example, if we're building a churn model, we just might need some contribution up front from them to help us understand what the data means, understand some of the business context, and then we can go off and build the model and then only consult them at the end when we need to do some fine tuning. But if we're building, for example, dashboards, then we need more of the client's time, because they need to give feedback. Once they see it, they'll give us feedback on how it looks and feels. They might say they don't want filters here, they don't want data graphs and charts in that way. So there's much more feedback that you need when you're building a dashboard than, for example, if you're building some kind of predictive model. So work that out in terms of what you need, and then you can be very good at being project-based. And like I said, with project-based, what that means is that we don't need to dedicate resource to an entire project. They only step in when they need to do the project, and therefore they can work on multiple projects at the same time. The other thing we also can do is, for example, if we do project work, is that we actually can automate a lot of our code. So if we've been building certain predictive models time and time again, we've pretty much got the code that we can sort of run again in that step and automate things. Also, we've got processes and procedures that allow us to speed things up. So if you are going to go down a project-based pricing model, which we do a lot of the time, then you've got to be very confident that you can deliver within time and also within budget. However, the selling days and hours is also something that we do. We have clients who basically say, look, we haven't got a project, we just got ongoing need, so just give us dedicated resources resource, and that dedicated resource to be 100%. So some of our clients want 100% of our resources. Some just want part-time. Some want like fractional, 20% 1 day a week, or 2 days a week, or 3 days a week. It all depends on what the client wants. So based on what they want, we do that. But again, then what happens there is it's not scalable. And also, let's say we committed 3 days a week to the client, then we have the other 2 days to put the resource onto something else. So unless we have another client that wants 2 days of their time and different 2 days, we can't really put them on another what we call time material project, time material client. We can utilize them on a project if they're free, but obviously the timings have to work out. But we've got good team, project management team that sort of lines that up. So we have a combination of both, and it works for us because we have different client needs, and that's how we operate. What we try not to do is none of our senior people work 100% on any client work, because they need to work across different clients to provide their expertise, but we use mid-level sort of resources to then support clients on a sort of regular and day-to-day basis. When you are going on for example, selling days and hours, okay, it is much more easier to manage your resources, because they sort of have in their diary that's the client they're working for. It's the client's responsibility to give them work, and they work on it. Okay, the challenge of that is, though, if the client decides that the person's not performing, or they've run, or their project's finished, or they don't have a need for that resource, then it comes off. Okay, and now generally what happens is that we will have a statement of work that says, minimum commitment will be X number of months, or if it's a really long contract over a year or more, then we will want at least 30 days, or ideally we try and put in 2 months, 60-day notice period, so that we can actually then get notice that they don't want the resource, and we can move them on to another project. So you've got to have all of those in place, okay? But it is slightly less riskier than project-based, which I'll talk about in a bit, the risks of project-based pricing. So when you do that, it's quite straightforward, but like I said, you can't scale unless you hire more and more people, and you've got to decide that if you want to be a really large agency, then that's the model that will allow you to do it. The other challenge is obviously don't get yourself, as the owner of the agency, drawn into delivering work yourself on a time and material basis, or on a selling days and hours, because your time will be occupied on that client work and not on other things, for example, new business, admin, finance, all that kind of stuff. Now on a project basis, though it's easier to scale and you can reuse and repeat certain processes, there is risk that if you've underestimated the amount of time it will take, or there's complications that arise, or even the client is very slow to respond and so forth, you may end up just spending more time than you would have ideally liked to spend, or more time than you've budgeted for, and then it starts eroding into your margin. The other thing is obviously if the client suddenly adds more requirements, and they usually creep in. It's not like they go, I've got a new requirement. They get the product, or they get the service that the project that you deliver, and they go, oh, actually we'd like this, we'd like that. Oh, did we not mention, and that's a classic one where they go, oh, did we not mention we wanted it to do this? And they didn't mention it at all, but you go through your notes and you find they haven't mentioned it, but now you sort of think, oh, we have to deliver for the client. So to mitigate that kind of risk is to sort of put those things as a separate list and go, look, these are out of scope, this is what we agreed in the statement of work, and these things that you're now asking for are out of scope. But sometimes you find, unless you've got the statement of work very tight, that they can sometimes say, but this is what we meant by this. Okay, so when you are building your statement of work, very clear in what you're actually delivering. We've, in the early days, when I was starting off my agencies in the early days 10 years ago, that's something I learned very early on, that if you don't tighten the statement of work and exactly what you're delivering, the clients will try and squeeze things in based on what you've initially agreed. So if you're thinking about your pricing model for your data agency, like I said, you could go on a selling days and hours, which is straightforward, simpler, as long as you get a statement of works with enough notice periods that you can move people on and off projects. That's really good. Or if you wanted to scale with fewer people, then you want to go on a project basis. And also when you start doing more and more similar projects, you can start reusing a lot of your process and procedures, and even your code. But with project based, there comes more risk, as I've mentioned. So you really need to decide what you're most comfortable with, and that's the one you would go with. Like I said, if you scale up to a certain size, like we have at B Data Solutions, then we operate both models, because that's what our clients want. And again, that's what you might find. You might find that how you price your projects is determined by your clients. But if you're starting off as a small agency, then you might want to start off on a project basis.